This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to episode 62 of Cooking with Grief, the internet's premier weird fact-based podcast. I say premier, we're not in the top of the charts in either history or science or art or any of the other things we talk about. But we're the only place that combines them all with comedy, I think. I haven't checked. It's probably not. There's probably plenty of other good podcasts. Anyway, I'm Chris. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host from another mother. That didn't rhyme. I didn't say we're a musical podcast. It's Chris.
Hello, I am your co-host from another mother.
Are you well?
I am well. Are you well?
I am well. Alright, small talk done. Go on, what were you saying?
I feel like we need our own category. Like, okay, yes, there's the comedy, section. There's, like you say, art, science, history, but no combination of with like grief in the name.
Yeah,
I think that's the way we get to be the premier one in that category.
Well, it's like musical comedy things. Like you get a song that isn't that great as a song, and you get some jokes that aren't that great as jokes, but you combine the two, and it's hilarious. Like a Weird Al song. If Weird Al just stood there and made his jokes without any musical backing or anything, like
spoken word.
Yeah, people would be like,
another one rides the bus.
Yeah, people would be like, that's not funny. Just done a combination of words. And like I say, his music is it's just cover versions of other songs. I'm sure he's written his own stuff as well. I'm not a Weird Al. And this isn't to hit on Weird Al, because when you put them together, hilarious.
And I think with music comedy is that, like if you go see like a stand up and they tell a joke and it doesn't get and it like no one laughs, then you can make the argument that they're on that night are not particularly funny. Whereas at least with a musical comedian, you cannot deny that they made music.
That is true.
It's like, well, although I didn't laugh personally, I can't, you couldn't go see Tim Minchin and being like, oh, he shit at the piano.
Yeah, exactly. And in much the same way, even if this isn't funny, you cannot deny that we have made a podcast.
Yeah, you can't judge us. We are beyond reproach. I think is your point.
Yes, exactly. We have transcended
Blameless.
Morality and human understanding. And yeah, we'll tell you facts that aren't necessarily entirely... Well, no, they are accurate facts. They're not necessarily the best researched. Not, full disclosure. Like, we're not... These are not peer-reviewed, deep dive, 3,000 word essays.
We are not investigative journalists.
No.
I'm an ex-baker, and you do something with spreadsheets.
I thought you were going to say a candlestick maker. Only when it goes wrong and it all sets on fire. That's probably a good place to just explain what this is, just for anybody. Because so far, people, if this is your first time, all you've heard is as sort of slightly
quite defensively.
Yeah.
You can't judge us. And it's like, I mean, I absolutely can. This is a commercial product that you're putting out voluntarily into the internet. You can absolutely judge it all you want.
Yeah, you can. So just as a sort of not like rewind a bit, non-defensive explanation.
Be great if you left a review.
That too.
We are not above reproach.
But yeah, so the way the podcast works is I bring a topic of interest. Chris brings a topic of interest. Neither of us have heard these topics of interest before. These topics of interest could be about anything that we've found that we think is an interesting fact. Could be about, as mentioned, it could be about science. Could be about like a new discovery. It could be, history and the history of science as well. It could be like how something was discovered in the first place. Because as we know, old-timey scientists were all basically just a bit bonkers. It could be about some interesting facts from history. We often circle back and end up at ancient Greece or ancient China. Those are two of our regular stomping grounds, because it turns out those places seem to invent a lot of stuff, or at least wrote it down. I feel like that's a big thing, actually, just thinking about it now I've said it out loud. That's probably why we do tend to end up at those two when we're doing these weird facts, because they actually bothered to write things down. I have like everything down. But yeah, or it could even be about, art. Yeah, just the general human existence, the human condition, anything.
What tears look like under a microscope before. That's
true.
Sort of combining science and human emotion.
That's true. And we've done turtle burglars. Or tortoise burglars. We're going quite a debate about whether they were.
But not turtle burgers.
But not turtle burgers, because that would be cruel, probably.
Oh, delicious.
Indeed.
Not that cruelty is the opposite of deliciousness.
If anything, they often go hand in hand.
Yeah, just look at veal.
Yeah, exactly. You have to taste the suffering. There goes any vegan listeners we had.
Our apologies.
Well, there's the grief. And the cooking.
Yeah.
And so I feel like now we've hit all the bases. Let's segue into your first topic, Chris.
So for my topic this week, I'll start off with a question, as I always do. Chris, have you ever been fired, or let go, or sacked, or anything like that?
No, I'm not actually.
Or you're always left on your own terms?
Well,
held high.
Well, for my first few jobs, they were. I realised actually I'd never actually quit a job officially.
You just stopped turning up.
Well, yeah, because that's the thing. So my first few jobs were what do you call it? Like temporary contract, like Christmas set period contracts, or like a summer period contract, whatever. Like they were set contracts, and then I had a job. I was working in a supermarket, and then I went to university, and this was one where I worked there for like a year, so I had, it wasn't a set contract. And that was it. I wasn't going to quit because I was just going to transfer to a store at my university. Mm-hmm. And then it turns out they had no vacancies. So I thought everyone, I was like, oh yeah, because like, I'd filled in the paperwork for a transfer. But then like I say, it didn't, it didn't happen. And so I just assumed everyone knew. And then like literally like 2 days before I quit, like the store manager was just like, somebody mentioned the other day that you're leaving like tomorrow. I was like, yeah, that's right. It's my last day. Like, you've not actually told HR
where's my cake?
that you're leaving. And I was like, oh, but I said I was going to transfer. Yeah, and then you are supposed to hand in like a 4-week notice period. I was just like, oh, that's not going to happen. It's just like,
I've got a 4-hour notice if you like.
Yeah.
So is that Ben Bridges? Yeah.
Yeah. So I realised, and then I've worked at the same job since. Had another job with like set contracts and stuff until I ended up with my permanent job that I'm still here after several years. So now I realised I've never actually quit, and I've never been fired either. I just stopped going places.
Well, my topic this week is there's actually some very sad news that the official wizard of New Zealand got fired.
I did actually see this headline, and then luckily for you and this podcast and the entire concept on which this show is based, I didn't do any further reading.
Oh, excellent.
So
this is one of the rare times that I've picked a topic that's like current affairs, which is always a risk because it's
you better edit this and get it out fast.
So yeah, well, I'm off work tomorrow. So really good.
We'll post it, and then they'll be in the news like the New Zealand wizard has been rehired.
oh, worse! Like dejected wizard kills 6. And our sort of like light-hearted treatise of it doesn't exactly age well.
No, exactly.
But yeah, one of the last of the official wizards to go. It's a sad sign of the times. So the sort of story.
Honestly, because you can't see New Zealand, which is obviously like in recent times famous for being, Lord of the Rings, where they filmed that. And Wizard. And then he said, like, the way you just said then, the last of the wizards left and stuff, it just sounds, the last of the wizards has gone with the elves to the west, into the undying lands.
or Australia. But I mean,
it turns out the elves were just going to Sydney. Like,
yeah. I mean,
booze cruise, mate.
What was that? Hang on, what accent was that?
Oh no, that was just me going booze cruise, and then mate because they're Aussies.
Oh right, I thought it was either a terrible Australian impression, it was either a terrible New Zealand impression, or even like the worst, like misquoting from Lord of the Rings. Frodo, my boy, booze cruise, mate. Well, yeah, but if you think about it, he sort of is the last of the wizards because
they're not a real thing.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I suppose the closest thing that like real wizards would be like the sort of court astronomer in like sort of kings and queens courts.
Oh yeah,
which were broadly wizardy, maybe.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Culty. So yeah, but I mean the fact he was the only official one on like the. But yeah, so the sort of story is that the wizard or Ian Brackenbury channel, because of course he'd have to be called Ian.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're called Ian, then you either admit that you've got a boring name, or you legally change your name to the wizard. He was the official wizard of Christchurch in 1998, when the city council signed a contract with him to provide quote acts of wizardry and other wizard-like services.
Wait, what year did you say?
1998.
Oh, so he predates the Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Not the book,
the films,
but
at least.
Like the association of it with New Zealand. So they went all in on wizards before they were laying the groundwork. Well, actually, come to think of it, maybe it worked. Did he do a wizardy did he do like any wizardy spells and be like, I will get us billions of dollars of tourist dollars?
He does mostly sort of like rain dances, and then he's more of a street performer from what I've seen. I mean, I think he dances in the rain.
Oh, okay.
But he was paid $16,000 a year by the council. So
I love how you say he's a street performer. So he's basically somehow gained the system enough to be a street performer that is no longer reliant on like goodwill.
Yeah,
like everyone else has to actually like work for their money.
But the thing is, like, he put in the time because he was an amateur wizard between... So he was born in England. He got a degree from Leeds.
I feel like all wizards are amateurs. Like, in this day and age.
But he's the one professional one, or at least was. He moved to New Zealand in 1976.
Wait, so he's English?
And then yeah.
Oh.
And then was an amateur wizard for the next 24 years. So he's put in the hard graft of amateur wizardry to earn that cushy ivory tower of a $16,000 a year salary, which means that the Christchurch City Council, during his tenure, paid him $400,000 to essentially hang about in a hat.
Oh man. Yeah, obviously in the last 25 years or whatever, like, the world's gone through some ups and downs and stuff. And throughout all of that, they've still been like, yeah, but we've got money for the wizard. like Christchurch. Was it Christchurch?
Yep.
Yeah, didn't that like get like leveled by a massive earthquake? Yep. 10 years ago or something. And they were like, yeah, no, we still got wizard money though. Like, of course we do. Like, I don't know what else has happened. But I'm sure there's been enough things have happened in
community.
You know, like obviously there's the massive financial crash that, like, you know, like in Britain, for example, they decided they no longer have enough money to, like, you know, fund like schools and doctors and things like that. And yet,
feed school children.
In New Zealand, they went, but we still have wizard money. I know 16 grand isn't a huge amount. Like, is it dollars or is it pounds? That
it's $16,000
New
Zealand dollars.
Alright, so I don't know what their currency is relative to like the pound or US dollars or whatever. But if it's anything like Australian dollars, like even less than 16,000.
Yeah, but it's still thousands that.
Oh yeah, that could have gone on something.
Yeah.
Unless he was using his wizardry to make money.
If he was a proper wizard, surely he could just like make magic coins.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I think
Gandalf get paid. I've never really interrogated the wizard economy of Middle Earth.
But I mean, the thing is, because he's one of the he's the really old dude. So I reckon
Who is Gandalf or the?
he's Gandalf. One of the. I mean, Ian the Wizard is also. He's like in his late 80s, so he is also an old dude. However, isn't Gandalf meant to be thousands of years old?
Oh yeah,
so
Gandalf is. Isn't he one of the Maya? So he's
that's the thing. So all you've got to do is invest a little bit in a ISA, like say 1,000 years ago. He's fucking rolling in it. And also, what are a Gandalf's upkeep? So you've got to feed like your horse.
Yeah. Light
bulbs for your staff. I'm dry cleaning once you become Gandalf the White because Middle Earth is fucking grubby and he's always pristine.
That is true. That's true. But he didn't have to worry about that for like a good few thousand years whilst he was in his...
Yeah.
He did seem to spend a lot of money on weed, though. Because he was always smoking that pipe.
That's why he's mates with all the hobbits. Because it's essentially mates rates for weed. He's only got one hat.
That is true. That's about it.
So, and then he just needs a bit of a per diem, which will... I guess like living off the interest of his ISA days.
Yeah.
Before in the second age. I don't know.
He got a loan off Smaug. Just invested it. Or maybe that's why he keeps it. It's just been growing under Smaug for like thousands of years.
All right,
all of this,
it's fraud.
The entire book of The Hobbit was just Gandalf finding a way to make a withdrawal from an ATM. It was just like, guys, things have spiraled out of hand over the last few thousand years, and now there's a dragon in my ATM. Yeah,
you've just got to fight your own ATM. I mean, I think we've put something to bed, if not real wizards. But if my topic was about the finances of Gandalf, then we've covered that. I mean, but at the end of the film, he does like sail off. Like, also, who's paid for that? Like the boat. I mean, I don't want to call it a super yacht because but it is a boat, and he's basically going to an offshore island in the Undying Lands. So I think Gandalf's source of income, if Gandalf was real, if Gandalf was still on this earth, the Panama Papers are all over that shit. It's sketchy as fuck.
I'm going to say that Gandalf has an offshore account.
Yeah. And Frodo knew too much, which is why he had to come with him.
It's true. So, this wizard... Any embezzlement that we know of?
Not that I know of. He's the reason is given him for his sacking is that the council said that they're embarking on a new tourism and promotional direction that will reflect its diverse community and showcase a vibrant, diverse modern city. But I mean, what's more diverse than an official wizard? You're the only capital city that's got one.
To be fair, imagine the hilarity if he just comes back in a couple of weeks, but now he's wearing white. And it's just like, it's Wizard Man Ian the White. Ian the Grey is no longer employed by Christchurch Council. This is Ian the White.
I mean, I think he's got to do it. And Ian, if you're listening...
long shot.
Yeah.
We've just mercilessly mocked your career for the last 10 minutes.
I mean...
I say mercilessly mocked. It was actually with quite a touch of admiration and jealousy.
Yeah, it's essentially a Swizz he's got away with for 20 years. I wish I could do the same. He was asked whether he'd put a curse on the council, and he said he preferred to give out blessings. I give children happy dreams, he's quoted as saying, general good health, and I want to make bureaucrats become more human.
Oh. The way he said, like give out blessings, I was just thinking, is the Pope a wizard? He has a staff. He has a hat. He's an old man.
In white.
Yeah.
You've seen that footage recently of someone stopping the Pope, like the Pope's doing one of his like drive-by sort of shows.
Yeah.
And someone holds out a baby also dressed as the Pope, and he laughs so much he stops the baby and says hello to the baby dressed as the Pope. Hey, you're the Pope! I'm the Pope! You're the Pope!
Yeah, that's basically the plot of the two popes.
Yeah. Yeah, but one's a baby.
That's the sequel, Two Popes and a Baby.
Yeah. Wait, sequel to the Two Popes or sequel to Boss Baby?
It's a sequel to the Two Popes. Will be Two Popes and a Baby.
Okay.
One of the popes will be played by Ted Danson. And they'll just have to look after a baby in the Vatican.
Hey, what are we gonna do with this baby who looks like a pope? And finally, who would you vote for as Pope of... not Pope. We all get a vote.
I'm not a cardinal, I don't get a vote.
You told me you were a cardinal. If we were to elect, say, a Wizard of England, if not Manchester...
I mean, I don't know who's in the running.
I don't know. Like, I suppose the obvious thing...
I don't know many wizards, I'm not going to lie.
Yes, neither does anyone who knows Ian. But we could have Ian McKellen.
Oh, yeah, he'd be a good one. And he's local.
Probably need a bit more than 16 grand, but, like...
Yeah.
He just reprises his role. Alan Moore claims to be a wizard, so he
Looks like a wizard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Wasn't there a band called Wizard? Are any of them still alive?
Oh, I don't know, but like you know that because I only know their Christmas song that's on every year, and I can't even remember which one it is. But he just looks really creepy and noncy. They're Wizard. Not a fan.
A band from the 70s looking creepy and noncy. Gasp. Introduced by Jimmy Savile on Top of the Pops. Yeah. So yeah. Maybe it's best we don't have wizards in official positions. No.
Daniel Radcliffe, young wizard, but he needs to grow out his beard more before I take him seriously as a wizard.
What a sentence. Before I take him seriously as a wizard.
Wait, who played Dumbledore in the film? I know it was Michael Gambon, but he's dead. Is it Michael Gambon?
Yeah.
Is he dead?
Hmm.
No.
I think.
No, it wasn't. Michael Gambon took over. It was John... No, not John Ho. It was David Attenborough's... Richard Attenborough, that's the one. He's dead.
Oh.
Alright.
So he was Gandalf for the first film.
Dumbledore.
And then it was Michael Gambon.
Michael Gambon, who I think is still alive. Oh, and also now because they're doing those prequels, it's Jude Law, but there's another. They're a good podcast. They were a network friend of ours, Body Count, and they on Twitter. I can't think of Jude Law as Dumbledore without them referring to him as Dumble Daddy. Because the hosts of that podcast are big fans of Jude Law as Dumbledore. They just always refer to him as Dumble Daddy, and it's just wormed its way into my brain now.
But like to that point, I don't know if wizards should be sexy.
Sorry.
like
the ethical dilemmas of our time.
If Gandalf was fighting the Balrog, right, and then the Gandalf like uses his whip and then like tore off like his robes, and he is just absolutely jacked underneath, like glistening abs in the light of the Balrog's eyes.
Actually,
tonally, that would be really weird. And I'm not saying that abs is the only way to be sexy. It's just the
Have you ever heard
where is this going?
The Shannara series. So it was a book series by not Terry Pratchett, I've forgotten his name. It's like a fantasy book series. He's written loads of them. Okay. I really quite like the books. I read them when I was younger. You know, they're Lord of the Rings-esque, but they go in a different direction. But, you know, like fantasy thing. And rather than wizards, they have druids, because he, had to mix it up a bit so it wasn't too close to copyright infringement. But they're called druids. But in my head, when I was reading the books, again, because I'd seen Lord of the Rings and whatever, you have druids and stuff, just in my head it was always old man in a robe type thing. Mm-hmm. When they actually, they did a TV show of it recently, a couple of years ago, and rather than going that route, they had he looked like a New Zealand rugby player type person, covered in tattoos and stuff. And completely not how it was in my head. And then I thought, you know what? Weirdly, that works. It was it was nice to go
type.
Yeah, and it was like nice to. I'm gonna find who it was now. I'll just do some on the fly research.
We also need the name of the author.
Yes, that's true.
Other than Terry someone.
Terry something over. Terry Brooks.
Pratchett.
There we go.
Terry Brooks. And the actor's name was...
And the actor's name is Manu Bennett, who is New Zealand, Kiwi, whatever.
I wonder how he feels
Probably
about
plays rugby.
the last of the Wizard.
Yeah. No, but, I mean, he looks like a
sex piece.
Yeah, he is Gandalf with a whip. No, wait, what? Stupid, sexy Gandalf.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. And on that reference to the 90s, I think that'll do it for Wizard, Sexy or Otherwise.
Right.
That's the end of my topic. Chris, what's yours?
Okay, so for my first topic, I'm going to go into something that we think we know about, but, well, in this particular instance, is actually less well known than we thought. Marriage. You know, this podcast is a lot like a marriage. We laugh, we fight, we eat hors d'oeuvres. I've never been married.
Big three. Can we pin down a definition on hors d'oeuvre? Like a starter, but like in a single mouthful?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like... Is a vol au vent? Would you say a vol au vent is an hors d'oeuvre?
It's the most middle class this podcast has ever been. Yeah, I would.
Okay.
You know,
Alright, so bringing this podcast down, so if you say that's the most middle class, let's bring it dial it down a little bit then. What about mini sausage rolls?
Also an hors d'oeuvre.
Okay, cool.
A mini quiche?
Oh, definitely. Especially if it's a quiche Lorraine. Quiche Lorraine.
But weirdly, sushi isn't considered an hors d'oeuvre. But it is essentially... It's like a bit of something to basically hold while you eat salmon.
That is true.
And yet, why isn't a salmon nigiri not a vol au vent?
I can't explain the rules. Anyway, marriage.
Oh, yeah.
And at weddings, there are often buffets, so, segue. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. There we go. We're naturals at this. So, marriage, and specifically, so obviously, when people use the term, traditional marriage and things like that, they're harkening back to an older time. But it turns out that in Britain anyway, even after Christianity had, become the official, by far most popular, if not only, religion on this island, traditional marriage was not the way all the time how we thought. So let's go back in our time machine to Anglo-Saxon England. Thank you.
Oh, time machine noises.
I got that. It was implied.
Oh yeah.
So we're in Anglo-Saxon England, pre-Norman, so we're talking 600-ish to 1000-ish, 1066, and all that. Hey, that's the name of the film, isn't it?
0800 00.
And that's an advert for somebody who isn't sponsoring us. But if they'd like to.
No, but what a pervasive, what a good jingle.
Good jingle. And a good phone number. That they got 1066 as their phone number, and they're called Hastings. Yeah. Anyway.
All works. Segway.
Yeah. So obviously we always consider marriage in the Christian sense being between, traditionally when people say traditional marriage, between one man and one woman. But it's weird because we always think of as well that when we think back to old, the Dark Ages and stuff, that sort of the idea of a secular wedding seems like a new concept, doesn't it? Again, traditional marriage in a church, blah, blah, blah. the idea of doing it not in a church and all that is like always feels like a fairly like recent thing. But back 1,000 odd years ago in Britain, in England, weddings were actually not necessarily done by the church. They could be done by the church, but it was actually like the blessing of like the alderman of your village that was the actual or alderman or whatever your headsman or whatever, like, was the power with which your marriage was sort of done. And even then, because like especially like more rural areas, you might not ever see him or only see him fairly rarely, so a lot of the time it was just sort of an agreement, like you and the man's family and the wife's family agree, and then the church would like bless them, and they were trying to like say whether or not one was legitimate or not, but they didn't actually have any powers to enforce it. So, and I'm guessing this was like, and obviously sort of a hangover from the Anglo-Saxons, Germanic, because obviously before they became Christians and all that, they had more, well, quite similar to like Vikings and the Norse, it was that Germanic tradition where polygamy wasn't rare. And so, in Anglo-Saxon England, polygamy, and I've also read somewhere, but I've not been able to find multiple sources to sort of verify this one, that, is it polyandry? That it was even a thing in some cases where there'd be a wife with multiple husbands. Even that wasn't entirely unheard of in like certain situations, I think. From what I read, it seemed to be when there were sort of disputes with, seemed to be the case with a lot of these things, inheritance and stuff. When they couldn't, when there were multiple claims and stuff, and sometimes the easiest way of, or the way it was decided to settle it was rather than, one man gets the wife and one is like, right, fine, you both get the wife type situations. But
can I just ask, how much of this topic was inspired by playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla?
Oh, none, actually.
Oh, right. Oh,
but it was inspired by a book called The Morning and the Evening, which was by Ken Follett. The Evening and the Morning, by Ken Follett, which is a book set in Anglo-Saxon England around the turn of the millennium. So that's what inspired, because there's some characters in there that have these marriages, and I was like, hang on a second, is this real? Because it seemed like a very well-researched book.
Because it seemed anachronistic to be so sort of un-Christian almost.
Yeah, but it seemed like a well-researched book, so I was like, let's have a look, and it turns out it's correct.
Although we think of, even if Christianity was pervasive and, like you say, the main religion, was it more a unifying thing in the same way that the Romans sort of, or the way that Christianity has often been used to sort of transition from pagans or like other religions into sort of a more unified thing, so that actually like Britain, maybe even if like the religion was Christian, like society and community had sort of still kept its old thing, or was it that Christianity was different?
No, so I think I'll get into this in a second. It seemed that Christianity, or at least the church, wasn't a fan. But there seemed to be some sort of like, in fact, it wasn't until later on, they're like, so you had the bishops who ultimately got their power from the Pope, who may or may not have been a baby.
I was going to say one of them.
And there seemed to be some sort of like power struggles. Again, this is loosely researched. I don't know the exact details, but so it seemed to be like they both had powers in the country, like the king and then his nobles and feudal system, so it sort of filtered down that way. And then like a parallel power system, which was like the church, because I think they had lots of money as well, because they had built all the abbeys and stuff like that. And so they seemed to be like sometimes at odds, and they both had powers to, I think the church, they needed to keep each other on the same side, so they'd work together, but not always happily.
They're sort of keeping each other in check, but also keeping the status quo.
And then as time went on, And then
as long as the peasants don't have any power.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And then as time went on, so I'll get to this in a bit, but King Canute was the one who finally outlawed it, and it was thought that it was done since he himself had 2 wives. It was thought that this was done at the behest of the Archbishop of York, who had some sway over him, that, had him in a bit of a bind for whatever reason. And then eventually it all seemed to end for good, pretty much, when the Normans came. And I'm guessing they had a bit more, I don't know.
Entrenched sort of ideas of what marriage is.
And more entrenched with the church. So, so what happened was the church, and it's weird because I think most of the records we have about it, especially for like non-kings, because obviously in a lot of places around the world in history, it's been like, a man must take 1 wife, except the king, who may have 1 wife and many, many, many concubines, and so on.
Yeah, mistresses and...
Yeah. But...
And even like prima nocta.
Yeah, well, though apparently that wasn't really a thing that seemed to have been... Well, there's not much evidence of it. But
it's just exaggerated, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so a lot of the information we have on these marriages are from priests and monks and so on complaining about them.
Oh, right.
So, religious scholar Alcuin, don't know how to say that, who died in 804, so that gives us an idea when we're talking about, basically said Christians were not to imitate the example of the Old Testament, so they clearly said that was wrong. I guess in the Old Testament some people had that. Then somebody else, sorry.
This book is gospel, but not obviously not this bit.
Woolston's Canon Law collection, which is a collection of clerk decrees, said that concubines have never been permitted, never are permitted, and never will be permitted.
Okay, that's a fairly hard line.
And then, so some books that written for priests and stuff that say like guidebooks, whatever you want to call them, rule books, which say
priesting for dummies.
Yeah, that says priests should not perform any rites on men who have 2 wives unless they repent one of them.
Right.
Stuff like that. So yeah, it's basically there were rules and stuff. It's one of those things where when there's like when you see a sign and you know that sign was put up. Because it's like the other day, I noticed that there's a new sign down the road near here. It's quite a narrow street, and it's like been put up, and it's like a proper, solid, sturdy road sign, like not like a hastily put up one, but like a full-on permanent fixture that says like HGVs do not go down here, do not follow your sat nav, because it's quite a narrow road. And I'm thinking, a HGV has definitely gone down there in the last week because that sign wasn't there, and now somebody's so very specific. Forcefully. So it's one of those things. It's like we know that concubines and multiple wives must have been a thing because there are enough things about priests to complaining about them or being told not to, get involved with them.
Yeah, in the lobby of my accommodation at my Chinese uni, there were loads of rules for lobby, and it was things like no smoking in the rooms, or if you the fire alarm, blah 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 blah. And then I don't know, say rule number 14 was guests are not permitted to run a brothel out of these out of this building, and it's like, who tried? Who ran a sneaky little brothel out of some uni accommodations?
Somebody did.
Someone did it because that is a specific rule. It's like no donkeys on the second floor. Yep. That means there was once a donkey on the second floor.
Indeed.
Ground floor, fine.
Oh, exactly. Ground floor is the place for
ass.
Place for it's that tying into the brothel.
Yeah. Rather than just thinking of when people talk about traditional marriage, then obviously if you go back too far, then it doesn't apply anymore. So there's that sweet spot in, let's say, 800 to 1950 that was, it's always interesting. It's the same way that people talk about, going back to the good old days, which is, I think, generally when they mean when people of colour and women didn't had much less of a say than when they currently do. But they frame it as in when, people were civilized, even though they never were, and like crime was low, and it just wasn't. It just
it was like objectively wasn't.
Yeah, and also there's just more people now, so and there's more factors that contribute to crime.
One of those things. It's why I've never It's not like I'm
been
against
a
all
racist.
traditions. No, it's not like I'm against all traditions, but I always think when people say, "Oh, but it's a tradition," and it's like, yeah, but it's only a tradition because somebody decided to do it, and then you've decided to never do. It's like, oh, we always do it this way. We do this, then this, then this. It's like, but before somebody decided to do this, then this, then this, they would have said the tradition was to do something else. It's you've just picked a point in time and said, this is, from now on, this is how we do things.
People who call themselves patriots tend to ascribe values to a country. They say, British values are stoicism and bravery and kindness. But what country would not describe their people that way? They are in the eyes of the patriot, wherever you are, those are universal qualities. Mm-hmm. No country says the Norwegian values of
laziness,
laziness and capriciousness and thievery. Yeah, we're patriots. It means it's just we don't need to talk about Brexit, but we are now seeing just the repercussions of wanting to go back to values. Or go back to a golden age, and it's turns out our golden age was shit.
Well, that's the thing. Again, just on that, but without going too political. Yeah. But there's a weird thing in Britain where when anything happens, people somehow relate it to the Blitz or World War II in general, and it's almost always, in fact, it is. I'm willing to say at least 90% of the time, somebody born after that time.
Oh, absolutely.
Insisting that we somehow need to act more and they go this generation. It's like that thing you always see Facebook memes. This generation wouldn't have been able to storm the beaches at Normandy. Your generation didn't either. Where have we got
you were born
this
in 1968.
Yeah. It's oh, sorry, I forgot about all those Normandy beaches you stormed 20 years before you were born. It's a very weird, I don't know if other countries have it, but we are. Well, I've said before, the reason why World War II.
do you think French boomers are this generation would have never stormed the Bastille?
Yeah, as long as you think they wouldn't be this generation would never capitulate half the country to Vichy.
do you think German boomers are a lot more reticent on it?
You'd hope so, but. I've always said the reason why World War II has become this sort of foundation myth, even though it's not even a foundation myth because it happened 1,000 years into our nation's history, is because it's if you zoom in on the map, simultaneously, if you zoom in on the map, then it's little tiny Britain, especially after 1940. Mm-hmm. It's little tiny Britain standing up alone against the might of Nazi Germany, which has now conquered all of Europe. But if you zoom out on the map, we're still a globe-spanning empire with billions of people under control, and it's so you simultaneously get to be the underdog and be that's when we were great and had an empire, and it's yeah. And then obviously, pretty much immediately after that, we ran out of money. And became America's
it's both David and Goliath being the same person.
Yeah, it's if you actually look at because we always say it was Little Britain standing up against Germany, but because we had the empire, if you actually look at the stats, I'm sure if you read it, Britain had far many more. Basically, we had more men, more money, more material. We had everything. We were not the underdogs. But just because, obviously, if you look at a map, Britain looks quite small, especially compared to Germany. And it's but you're ignoring the fact that lots of Britain at that time wasn't in Britain. And then they also harken back to that. So, who knows, maybe if they keep harkening back, we'll all get multiple wives one day. Or
husbands. Yeah. I mean, you started off describing this podcast like a marriage. Is that the eventual goal that
we marry all the listeners? simultaneously.
What, both of them? Wow. Yeah, you could be double teamed by. No, wait.
No, that's not.
Yeah.
And on that note, shall we skedaddle?
Should we say goodbye? Yeah, let's off ski.
And so on that note, I think it's time that we bid thee farewell, dear listeners, before we get married to all of you and become wizards. So yeah, like we promised at the start that we we said science, history, art. We didn't actually say wizards. So, if you're in a bonus for you.
Out of those three, which is wizardry and art a science?
Oh,
Well,
see, here's the thing. Depends.
Here's the thing. It's all bollocks.
Well, yes, but in some fantasy universes, science, wizardry is more like a science. There's a very precise sort of.
And sometimes, science is like the antithesis of magic.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's all about more
innate
abstract things.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. We'll put it under art.
Okay, that makes sense.
For now.
Under review.
Until we recategorize later, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll circle back to this in a later episode, I'm sure.
Yep.
Although, listeners, actually, this is a good chance. If you've got an opinion, art or science, then, in fact, I'm going to put a poll on Twitter, if I remember, which I might not.
We're becoming very binary in that last episode was called Eggs for or Against, and now we're going to go with wizards, art or science.
It's just because we're desperate for engagement and content, and so if we put... I'm terrible for this. If I see a poll on anything on Twitter, I click and answer, even if I don't have strong opinions. It could be about two films that... Look, which do you prefer? And it'd be two films I've never seen, and I'll look at it and be like, I think I prefer this one. I need to give you my opinion, world.
Can you do a poll of Hollands versus Greenhalgh's pies, please?
I will, although it could cause some bitter disputes.
And where can people interact and engage with these binary choices?
They can interact and engage with said binary choices by going on Twitter at Cooking with Grief, no G on cooking, because we ran out of characters. Or if you just search Cooking with a G with Grief, we should come up. You can also email us, cookingwithgrief@gmail.com, with all the G's that you'd expect included. You can also leave comments, because this, you may be listening to us on wherever you get your podcasts, but you may also be reading this on, listening to it or watching it on YouTube. So in that case, drop us a comment. And otherwise, just scream into the void. We'll hear you.
Yeah. And if we don't, someone will.
Yeah, exactly. Also, if you are listening to this on a podcatcher, whatever you want to call it, podcast repository, please leave a review. Especially if it's on Apple, just because they seem to drive traffic based on reviews. So please leave a review. Hopefully you liked it. 5 stars if you be so kind, but we're not here to force you. So I hate those things where it's like, when basically somebody gives you absolutely nothing, but it's like, please give me 5 stars. And it's like, but why?
As we said in the beginning, you can't dispute that this has been a podcast.
That is true.
You've had minutes of content. Regardless of how good. So, if that doesn't deserve 5 stars, then, lots of other things do. But hopefully you also think that we deserve 5 stars. Or just some stars. We deserve the time it takes for you to go to, our show, info page and just review it. That'd be cool.
And the best thing you could do for us, if you do enjoy the show, and you don't mind being ostracised, please... tell your friends, family, strangers.
Steal their phones.
Spread the word.
Subscribe on their phones.
On there, yeah. Tweet about us if you like. Just spread the. Put a Facebook post. Write a Tumblr blog. Whatever your way. Yeah. Just however if you have enjoyed this, if you could spread the word, we'd really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I think that's it.
Oh, one more quick thing.
Go on.
If any listeners are looking to get into cheese and don't know where to start, can I suggest cheddar? Mild or mature, doesn't matter which. Just
I'd go mature. Although if you just start in cheese, I'd say start with a mild, work your way up to mature. I've said before, I reckon. I mean, and I think we did actually run a poll on this a while ago. Of the great cheese nations, I'd say Britain has a very good everyday cheese. You got your cheddars, your Gloucestershires, your Red Leicesters. There's just,
your
if you want to go I was going to say, and then for a bit of, I won't call that an everyday cheese, but, if you're going to be a bit extravagant, then yeah, Wensleydale or a Stilton, something. France and Italy have the best, I'd say, the best extravagant cheeses.
Yeah.
If you go to Italy, you got yeah, exactly. You got your gorgonzolas, your mozzarella. France and the smelly cheeses are just still. I love Stilton, but France's smelly cheeses are right up there,
next level
and stuff. They've got some excellent cheeses, but for just good every day, gonna put it on a sandwich or whatever cheese. I'd say England has an excellent range. So,
what's your best wildcard cheese?
Oh, I don't know. What do you mean by wildcard cheese?
Something a bit more. What's your rogue option? You could go for a German smoked. You could a Spanish manchego would probably be.
I always thought manchego just sounds like the name of I don't know, a sultry Latin dancer. Well, my name is Manchego.
Well, in that case, I have crammed that exotic dancer into my mouth with wanton abandon. Fucking love manchego.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a great if you want a bit of variety to your pastas.
Okay.
And you're used to your parmesans, your pecorinos. If you want a sort of a nice nutty alternative, a manchego is a good one. Or just plain sliced with a little bit of apple, maybe.
Oh, delightful. Well, on that cheesy note, I think it's time to bid farewell.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Manchego.
Why do we say cheese in photographs? Cheese.
Because it makes you smile.
Cheese. Oh. Cheese does make me smile.
Yeah, but also saying the word does it. Whereas if you said soup, everyone would look dead grumpy in
soup.
Soup.
I've got a mirror in front of where I record and it's soup. Yeah, you're right. Cheese. Yeah. No, I'm with you. Goodbye.
In 1957, Laika became the first animal to orbit Earth. What kind of animal was Laika?
What is the only team in the Big Four North American sports leagues which shares its name with one of the Avengers?
And here's one more question for you. Are you the type of person who enjoys playing trivia games, learning new things, and having a bit of fun along the way?
If you are, or if you just want to find out the answers to those other questions, then our podcast, Quiz and Hers, might be right up your alley.
Each week, one of us writes new trivia questions for the other person, covering everything from science to history to pop culture to sports.
And every question in a game relates to some theme, like Game of Thrones,
internet memes,
sandwiches,
or animals in space.
Some of the themes make more sense than others.
So if you like trivia, learning, or real couples testing each other's knowledge and patience, check out our podcast, Quiz and Hers, part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network.
Quiz and Hers, the trivia podcast where we test each other's knowledge and the strength of our relationship.